Hello and welcome back to Game Brigade. I'm your host, Brian, and on this show, we do reviews, previews, and playthroughs and have discussions about our favorite board games. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Okay, so today on the show, we're going to be having another discussion. Welcome to Game Brigade Talks, as it is right now. We'll see if that name sticks, but that's what we're going with. And today, we're going to be talking about the top 5 mistakes that new gamers make when entering the board gaming hobby. I thought this was an interesting subject because I think not a lot of people talk about it. And I think a lot of people experience this. Now, I don't necessarily think all of you have experienced this, but you might have experienced some form of this in one way or the other. I know myself, I have experienced this, and I might give you guys some anecdotal evidence that I've personally experienced as I go through my top 5 list. But I felt like this would be a good subject to cover as we discuss things that people do so that you can be aware of them, not necessarily how to avoid them, because I do think in life we have to experience things to learn from it firsthand. You could be told multiple times that something is hot, but until you burn yourself, you won't truly know the sting. And I think that's very true. So while I can make you aware of these things, I don't necessarily think I can help you stop you from failing or falling into it. But if you are more aware, you can maybe sense when something is happening. So without too much rambling here, let's go to number 1. So the first one I want to cover, number 1, would be the feeling to need to collect every game, especially on the hotness list, immediately. I know for myself, when I got the bug, when the Kickstarter bug, or not Kickstarter, when the board gaming bug, there is a Kickstarter bug, but when the board gaming bug bit me was right after I played Scythe. I had played Twilight Imperium, I played Scythe, then I played Gloomhaven. I was playing some of these big games, and as soon as I played Gloomhaven, it triggered on me. And I went out and I just looked for any game that people were mentioning or talking about to being somewhat popular, and I tried to buy as much as I could because I just wanted my collection and my wall to look a certain way. And I think that's a trap that a lot of people fall into, and it starts to create the wall of shame or shelf of shame, which is a selection of games that you've yet to unbox or play. I think every board gamer that I know has some form of self-shame. Not saying that every board gamer does, but a vast majority, I think, of gamers have a list of games they've never played. And some of them have been in their collection for a long time. And I do think a big part of that comes from the desire or the need to feel like you need to buy games, especially the top games, regularly. So that's something to be aware of and to know. You don't need the hotness. You don't need to chase down the brand new game. For example, me, even though this is related to a Kickstarter game, I do know this happened very heavily with any major release. And currently right now, there's a new game that just came out that's getting all over the secondary market. And to feel like if I don't buy this game right now in the secondary market, there might be no way for me to ever get this game. I have to get it now. I have to get it. I need that part of my collection. How cool would that be? So that's my first thing is, make sure you temper your expectations, play the games that you have currently, and then as you add more games to your collection, add them in a pace relatively at a pace that's healthy enough that you can play them regularly and get the enjoyment out of them. And if you find you're not enjoying those games, they're easier to then move and ship them and sell them off than just putting them on your wall for forever. Number 2 is backing too many Kickstarters early and often in your early board gaming career. I find that a lot of board gamers who get into this hobby will play a game that's something, a good game like Wingspan or Scythe, something like Everdell. These games that are retail-based games that are really primo games that people enjoy. And then once they hear about Kickstarter, may it be through like Simon Games having exclusives or something of that manner. They check out the website. They say, oh, Kickstarter. Oh, Kickstarter exclusives. Oh, I can back this game now and get all the exclusives and have all this stuff, and it'd be relatively, the same price I might pay it at retail. Okay, I'll back that game. And what I think people do, because that over there is fine, that idea is fine, but what I think people do is there's a void. I think somewhere in us, there's a hole in our collection that we feel we need to fill. So we go on Kickstarter and we back a game on Kickstarter, hoping to fill that void of getting a new game that we want to have. We want to open this game. We want to experience this game. The problem is that game is going to take a year to 2 years to fulfill. So that void that we have is not getting fulfilled. It's not getting sated. So we then back another game to fill that same void, and another game to fill that same void. And eventually you find yourself getting an email from Kickstarter that you're now a super backer because you backed 25 games in a year. And you look at your backlog and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got 25 games coming and I don't know when I'm going to have the time to play any of this stuff. This is probably more common than I think a lot of people give credit for. It's very common that people start backing games, and it's very easy to back a game on Kickstarter and spend more money than you normally would at retail. I think there's an interesting mind effect going on Kickstarter when you're like, you know what, I'll go all in. It's only $260. I don't think the number triggers with everyone, but if you're at the retail store and you're seeing millions of boxes, huge amounts of boxes, and you're like, this is $260, I think I can be okay without getting all of it. Maybe I'll just get this one in the first expansion. So I think my biggest thing is it's okay to be a Kickstarter person. My entire channel is almost related to Kickstarter because I love the content and the deluxeified games that come from Kickstarter. But I know when I first got into Kickstarter, I backed a lot of games that I don't think I necessarily would back now after learning more about my personal tastes. I said, oh, this game looks cool and I get a free mini if I back in the first 24 hours. Back. Oh, this game is cool because I get all these cool minis and I can play them with other board games. How cool is that? Don't ever do stuff like that. So I think backing too many games early, especially when you don't have the breadth of collection to find out what your tastes truly are, is a pitfall and an easy thing to fall into. So that's my second mistake I think too many gamers make. The third one, and this goes in line with 1 and 2, and I've mentioned this in my videos before multiple times. I've talked about this, that buying all the expansions. I don't necessarily think you need to buy as many expansions as you may think you do. And there's plenty of life in games in the core game, or there should be. And if there isn't, you might question why you're playing that game. But I think expansions in specific games can get to a point of redundancy. I know with myself, Imperial Assault, I'm looking at it right now, I bought every expansion of the big box expansions, as well as many of the small blister packs. Now, Fantasy Flight is notorious for over expansions of their games. And I would say a vast majority of my collection was Fantasy Flight based. Descent, Imperial Assault, Star Wars X-Wing, Star Wars Armada, and I had to have everything. And it doesn't necessarily even relate to just board gaming. I mean, I played tabletop miniature games for a long time prior to becoming more of a board gamer, and I had to have all the expansions and sometimes multiples of the same expansions in those regards too. I think these are things that a lot of the times you could buy the core game and get a lot of enjoyment out of the core game, and then at that time decide if you need an expansion. And when I say this, buy all the expansions, I'm mostly relating to if you're buying the game for the first time, buying the expansions at that exact time. I am still guilty of doing this to this day. I just did it with Everdell, where I bought 2 expansions with it without ever having played the game prior. These are things we're all trying to learn all the time from, understanding the concepts behind it. So I just personally think that a lot of the times, and this may be relating more to Kickstarter games, you don't need all the expansions. Save yourself some money, get the game, maybe get one if you want one that certainly strikes your fancy, but you don't need everything. Okay, so the 4th one, and I'm actually going to combine it with my old 5th one. I changed my 5th one. I didn't change it. I reworded it because I feel like number 4 and 5 were too similar. So what I had for 4 is knowing how to read your player group, and alternatively number 5 used to be understanding that your friends or your player group might not be as excited for your games as you are. So let's touch on the first one, knowing how to read your player group. I think, especially early, your player group might not be as well defined in terms of what kind of games you like or they like as a whole. And so you might be buying games that might not fit into the player group. And depending on the price of the game, it could be a hefty price tag. I know when I very much started into board gaming, I personally was a 4X fan. I loved 8-hour games, big games with competitiveness, player versus player aspects, and I found that half the player group didn't care for the player versus player aspects. So I had to pivot. I had to change. If I wanted to continue playing with games with this group of people, I had to pivot, I had to decide what else can we play, and found that co-op experiences were enjoyed by everyone. They enjoyed dungeon crawlers. They enjoyed co-op experiences. Or if it was player versus player, it had to have light enough aspects where it didn't feel like you were eliminating someone from a game. Player elimination mechanics entirely were discouraged. So early on, if you don't know what your group likes and you start buying a bunch of games, you could run into the situation that you might have duds that you don't know what to do with or might have a hard time getting rid of. The secondary market for board gaming can be very finicky, and if you want to make any type of money back on your investment, you have to sometimes buy, Kickstarters or something that has a scarcity to them, because I can't take my Star Wars Rebellion here and get nearly what I paid for it. I mean, I could probably get something close, but not anything what I paid for retail. So these are things that we have to consider. The second part of this one was temper your expectations for your partner in terms of, if they play with you. Like my wife plays with me. She's a gamer. But when I pull out a big new Kickstarter, she's not as giddy as I am. Like she's not like, oh yeah, let's play it tonight. I can't wait. And so when I was backing games originally, I was even backing games sometimes because I thought she would like it more, rather than like, how will this game be in general? Do I even enjoy this game? So I was chasing, I felt like the White Rabbit kind of thing, like chasing a dream, because I thought she was as excited as I was for these games. I mean, she likes games. I think a lot of my friends I play games with like games, but I don't think they like games to the point where I like games, where I get the joy of looking at my collection or my wall. So learning how to temper those expectations and say, why am I backing this game? Is this a game that I truly want, or if am I buying this for someone else in my player group that I think they might enjoy? It's kind of a fine line to ride, and I don't even know if I've figured it out myself, because I know I still back games for other people. The last one that I want to talk about, number 5, was understanding FOMO in all its forms. The fear of missing out is a deadly sin. I don't know how to say it, but it's something that's definitely there in board gaming. I just did a video on it. You can click this link up here and see more about that if you want, if you're interested in FOMO or knowing what FOMO is. But I think an interesting thing about FOMO is understanding it can come at any time, at any aspect. It's not necessarily related to just like Kickstarter and missing out on a Kickstarter exclusive. Especially right now, Black Friday is happening, Cyber Monday. This video will go up on Cyber Monday. There are sales going on everywhere. When I was at my local board game store, I think this was 2 years ago, they had this Zombicide collection on sale at a fairly decent price with all the expansions and all the it was like 5 boxes, massive. And I really was tempted by it. I was like, it's on sale. This might not be here tomorrow. If I don't buy it now, I could buy this for my collection. How cool would that be? I ended up not buying it, and I'm so thankful I did, because I don't think Zombicide is a game I really want to play. But the fear of missing out, of losing out on this deal currently happening, was very strong. And I did go back the next day to buy it, and it was gone. And that not buying it the first time and going back the second time and having it already sold, I'm so grateful for whoever bought that collection. But I have also, in the same vein, I went to that same store and they had a bunch of Star Wars Armada on clearance. I bought everything. I bought it all because I love Star Wars Armada. I was like, even though I had several of the ships, I said, I just bring it. I want all of it. And while I still love my Star Wars Armada collection, half of those ships I've never flown, unfortunately. And so the fear of missing out, the fear of not getting the thing now is hard to fight. And if it be with Kickstarter or a Black Friday sale or a board game group of someone selling a game that is a hotness game, there's times where look at your own collection, see what you're playing, and to ask yourself, do I have the time, or is my player group going to be able to play this with me at any reasonable time to be able to enjoy this, or if I'm buying this just to buy it. If you can justify it in some way, then fine, I understand. Sometimes I've bought games just because I want the game in my collection and I don't feel bad about it. But there's other games on my wall that I bought impulse buy and have regretted it deeply because I didn't really want it. Bought it because it was a good price or on sale. So I think FOMO is a very, very hard thing to fight. And I think if you can at least understand its presence, it's the first step in fighting it. So that wraps up on this 22-minute video. So this is much longer than I thought it was going to be. That wraps up my views on the top 5 mistakes I think all gamers make when they're entering the hobby. Hopefully this video was educational or informative or enjoyable in some way. I'd love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. What are some of your greatest mistakes in board gaming? What would you say is your top mistake you made entering the hobby? And what would you tell someone as a piece of advice? Let me know down in the comment section down below. I also will be having news regarding the second giveaway for Oathsworn. We'll have a video here very shortly regarding that one, so be looking forward to that. And on Wednesday, I believe we're going to be having an unboxing of my Too Many Bones box that came in. It's a massive, massive box. So I look forward to that. I will see you all on Wednesday.